Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final installment of our 2022 Coach Webinar Series. My name is Jocelyn Poirier. I'm the Rugby Development Manager at Rugby Ontario. And today we're talking all about defensive structure and tactics. So before we get started, I'll go over some housekeeping pieces for our webinar. As you may be able to see at the bottom of your screen, we've got a Q&A, raised hand, and chat icon. The chat is disabled for the session, but the Q&A function will allow you to ask questions throughout the session. And myself and Amanda will monitor those questions coming in throughout the session. So if you have any, throw them in there. We'll leave most for the end of the presentations or the end of the entire session. And if you have a question that you maybe need some more context for, that's what the raise hand function is there for. If we're looking for maybe something that you can't quite explain properly in writing, we can unmute you so you can ask your question out loud. All right. Well, I'll start by acknowledging that Rugby Ontario and our member clubs are situated on traditional Indigenous territories across the province. Rugby Ontario acknowledges that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory now called Ontario. We're thankful to the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who continue to contribute to the strength of Ontario and to all communities across the province. Today, I'm presenting from Gananoque, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, and is covered by the Crawford Purchase of 1783. I'll pass it over to Amanda now. You can introduce herself and our panelists.
Awesome, thanks, Jocelyn. Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda. I am the High Performance Coordinator with Rugby Ontario. For those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm sure we'll meet somewhere along the lines at some rugby event or another. We've got two really great spokespeople here for our defensive structure. Both come from a wealth of knowledge. We have Dave Butcher, who's the head coach of Queen's University men's program. And then we also have Aaron Tackle, who's a PhD teacher and coach mentor at Collingwood School. He was also the former director for Rugby Alberta and BC Rugby. So lots of knowledge. Be sure to write down your questions and throw them in the chat when you have an opportunity. So on that, Aaron, I'll pass it over to you.
And I'm going to pass it over to Butch because he's going to go first tonight with his 27 videos.
So I'm just going to share my screen and just open up a bit of a window here. So how I thought I'd approach this presentation was to kind of go off building a defense that happened recently to me. So I was privileged enough to work with the Canadian national women's team in their build up to the World Cup. And I came in fairly late to the process, less than a year before they came in. So I came in April, and I was asked to help out with their defense. Their head coach, Kevin Rue, was moving from defense to attack. So I thought I'd go through that process that I went through, and a process I've been through quite a few times in the past, and you know how I went about doing it, and love to hear some thoughts, some ideas of how other coaches have done it as well. So first and foremost, we came in April, and a lot of good things had happened already, but I wanted to come in and I had really strong views on how this team could perform based off their DNA. So what I wanted to do first was create a theme that we could all get behind. And the theme that I picked was we're going to create a red wall. And how I kind of shaped this was, if we create a wall, it's a really strong, really well-constructed wall. How does a team break this down? How do they get the ball past this red wall? Well, if it's really well-constructed and they can't knock it down, they either have to go around it if they're good enough, or if they're skillful enough, they can go over it, but they can never come through the middle of it. So we wanted to kind of shape that, and how we shaped that was, we're going to make the teams work to really hard to get the ball around the outside of our wall. And if they can't get around the outside, the other opportunities they have is a kick over. Maybe you're trying to kick through, but a kick over, and what does that look like? But they never ever come through the middle of us. And everything we talked about revolved around that kind of theme of being a red wall. So the first thing I had to do was, and I think what we all have to do as coaches, especially coming into a late program, is sell the idea. I think as coaches, we're definitely a salesperson all the time. We're selling, ideas, concepts constantly to teams. And coming into a team with some world-class players, I had to have my ideas and concepts pretty locked down. So we had to sell that concept of a new defensive structure. So how did I go about this? Well, I went about this giving them real visibility of three things that I think are super important in any structure system, whatever you want to call it. One, what my philosophy is, and the philosophy that I wanted to build behind our defensive system, the outcomes of this defensive system, and then I'm very big into using policy to drive decision making. So what do these policies give us, and what actually are they? So we spent a lot of time looking at this, and from that I shared what I believe my defensive philosophy is. So we consistently take away the opposition's time and space and challenge them to execute skill under intense physical pressure. Our offensive defense will create scoring opportunities even when we start without the ball, with physical intensity, decision-making, and organization. So I said that they could hold me accountable to this. This is my defensive philosophy, and this is the bedrock that I'll build everything off. From that defensive philosophy, what are the outcomes? What do we want from our defensive structure? Because if we don't know what we want, how do we build to get to there? So basically for me, the defense is how do we get the ball back? It's not stopping them score, because if they don't have the ball, they can't score. So how do we get the ball back, and how quickly can we do it? So we'll have accountability measures, and these outcomes are, we want to try and get the ball back in 6 phases or less, and that's our challenge every single time, either through skills errors, pressure, turnover, on feet, off feet, interception, or force them to kick so we get the ball back through pressure. The next outcome is killing the attack in 3 passes, and that talks to that pressure. You know, not just being happy to let them pass the ball, but how do we go after that ball every time and stop their defensive momentum and go after and getting that ball back? And then create consistent slow phase ball, which then allow us to get organized early and make them become more and more predictable through their slow phases. And then the last one, create opportunities to score points even when we're not in possession. So as I'm starting to sell this concept to the team, these are the outcomes we'll measure our success in our defense, and they never changed. That was the day one, first session. That's what we agreed on. We changed some language a little bit, but our defensive outcomes were set, and this every single time we had a defensive session, these are what we came back to in terms of our success measures. So the next piece is, well, what does my defensive system set up, however you want to verbalize it, look like? And I have a zonal ball watching system. And this has come from years and years of getting some things right, things drastically wrong, reviewing, fortunate enough to have a lot of very, very good coaches to work with. And I've finally settled on this way of defending. So what does that look like? I think it's really important that the players have a really, really good understanding of what the system is, and what it's going to look like. So we started to look at, well, if we have this system, what does it look like? How do we start building the wall? And we build that wall through having defensive policies. We first have to understand what a policy is. What does it give us? So a policy is a set of ideas or plans that are used on a basis of making decision-making as a group. And that decision-making as a group is really important to me. That defense, no, we're not talking about tackling, we're talking about defense. Defense is a group activity, and we all have to get on the same page at the same time, saying the same things happen at the same time as much as possible, so we can all make informed decisions. And I truly believe that if we've got the right policies in place, then we can drive that decision-making. So we set out our policies, and once again, we shaped this for the team. That we call our first set of policies the bricks in the wall. And this is what they look like. So force the attack to play around us, not through us. So what does that look? That means that we've got to be really well constructed in the middle of the pitch. That means we've got to get our spacing right. And we've got to also recognize that there's going to be space on the outside of our defense. We have to recognize that, because we're not going to cover every blade of grass. That's unrealistic. And that speaks to the next piece. So we want 2 in. So 2 in the tackle, or 1 in and 1 compete as a general rule, and 13 on the feet, which allows us about 80% field coverage with effective spacing. So once again, we're not going to cover every blade of grass, but we're going to construct that wall and force teams to try and work around us or go over us. The next bit is the mortar between the bricks. So how do we construct that? So The first piece is, and as I said, we're a zonal ball watching system, and I will go into that more. I'll paint some pictures to kind of clarify what I mean by that, that we're defending the ball. The ball is the only threat on the field. So we want to use the ball in terms of our decision-making, but also what we actually defend for our team. And the ball cues line speed. So ball in the air, we move, ball in hand, we control, which is going to give us our secondary line speed and our cues to move. And we always protect the inside shoulder of the next defender. So that's the mortar between our bricks that are really going to drive how we operate. And the last one, and it's the only non-negotiable, and the only time I would call something a non-negotiable, is effort. So we want to win every non-talent race. And how we define that is anything that doesn't take skill, we want to be the best at. So when we look at defense, at any one set of defense, there's one or two people executing skill. Everyone else, it's about movement skills, it's about how fast they can work and how hard they can work. If we're not working hard in defense, it will fall apart completely. So we have to have those effort measures, but we define what they are as we start going through this, and we'll delve into that a little bit, and we can bring more light to it as we go. So what does a zonal ball watching system look like? Well, it basically means that we're not letting the attack dictate our spacing. So we want to cover roughly about 80% of the field, and we've got to have fields of vision. So what we're looking for and we're searching for all the time is the ball. So if you see these triangles, that's basically our fields of vision where we're looking. So we're not looking up, and we can glance up by all means, but what we're looking at is kind of between 12 and 10 o'clock. And we're trying to search for the ball as it moves, okay? That way that if we're all looking for the same thing happening at the same time, then we can all start making informed decisions together rather than being man-focused and just being completely blinkered and going up on one defender. And as I said, we'll show you some video of this to kind of bring that to light. But basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to get into zones, so spaces, have equal spacing between each defender. So not letting the attack dictate, we're stretching them this way, we're stretching that way, and start to dictate our spacing. But we're going to get in the spacing that allows us to defend 80% of the field and also allows us to work together in terms of that zonal ball watching defense. So what we'll just show you here is this is a team, and this is probably the best clip I've seen of a team. And what I'll actually do is I'll actually come out of this presentation and show you it just as a video. This team is a man-on-man defense, okay? And what you'll see from this, just because the videos jump a little bit, is, okay, blow it up a little bit. So all I want the people on here to watch and please, make notes and challenge what you're seeing after this, and we can clarify a bit, is I want you to look at where the eyes on these defenders are. Are they looking to try and see the ball, or are they looking straight up at the defender? And how do they make decisions as a group rather than individuals, or do they make decisions as a group or individuals? So we'll run it through quickly, and then we'll play it again. So they get broken down there, and there's a very, very simple reason why they get broke down. I think they mess it up a little bit at the end, but it's a definite line break. So we'll just watch again, and we'll just break this down a little bit. So we can see there that already everyone's starting to look up, and even just before that, everyone's looking up. So he's kind of looking at one of these, he's looking at the guy in front, he's looking here, and he's obviously trying to track the ball now. So what happens inside is from probably this play, what's that, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth player out, they have no idea what's going on inside them, okay, and they can't defend as a unit. So they're going to come up and try and defend as individuals, defending one man. And you can see straight away when they come up here, he has no idea, the guy there that shot up, where the ball is. So he's not defending the ball, he's defending this man, even though he hasn't got the ball. So he's left the guy inside on a little bit of an island, and he actually can't defend now. As soon as that player with the ball gets to this space, he's out of the game completely. And you can see how easy it is. Both guys on the outside have actually no idea what's going on inside them, and it's a very, very easy line break. And you'll see a lot of teams used to use this type of defense, because they felt a comfort that they knew what was going on in front of them, rather than defending as a team and not allowing the attack to dictate spacing in between each individual defender. So that's a really good example of what happens when you go man for man, rather than going zonal and ball watching and taking care of the one thing that matters, which is the ball. So I'll show you some examples now of, and what I'll do is I'll break it down kind of on an individual basis, and then I'll put it into a team, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we changed the kind of mindset and structure of the women's team, and then they became, you know, pretty exceptional at it. So here's, sorry, I'll come out that one first. Sorry. So here's a really good individual video, and I'll just stop it when we're just looking at Elliot Daly here, the guy with the white top on. And if he goes man for man, he's going to be marking this fourth guy on the outside as a runner here. But what he does really well, and what the whole team do, and realistically they should have scored there, is he uses the ball, one, to make decisions, but the whole team is defending the ball, not individuals. So they do a really good job. One, you can see he's not even looking at the guy in front. He has an awareness he's there, but he's using that ball now and that pass to make a decision. As soon as it goes behind this runner, the runner in front of the ball then becomes irrelevant to him. And you can see this as he goes again, and that's some outstanding defense just by watching the ball. So we'll play it through at the full speed now. Uses the ball, and then goes. And it'd be very easy for him right at the beginning to be sucked into that if he'd gone man for man in his defense. So what does this look like in a full team? So Wales were under Sean Edwards very, very good at this. And Ireland are actually probably the best at this system at the moment. And what you'll see here is we'll just stop it there. If you just look at the behaviors of all the defenders from Toby Faletau all the way across the field, okay? Now, a lot of coaches will be, well, they're looking at the ruck. Well, what they're actually looking for is they're actually trying to sight the ball here. They're not looking at the actual ruck. They're trying to find the ball. The ball is going to release them off the line, but it's also going to be the real cue for their decision making. Okay, you can see they're starting to get equal spaces, so it's almost irrelevant of what the English team do here. They're going to have the spaces that they feel comfortable defending in, and they're going to defend as a defensive line. So we'll just let it play out a little bit. So you'll watch them get released by the ball. Okay, so you can see Toby Faletau is looking at the ball. Alan Wynne-Jones is on the ball, but he still wants to be able to see what Toby Faletau is seeing. Okay, he doesn't want to become isolated and looking up here. They pass the ball, they bypass those runners straight away, and the defensive line keeps moving because the ball is moving. They go again. As you can see, the Welsh players completely bypass any in runners. Ball is moved again, and they get to the outside. And the only way they do that so effectively is that they're a ball watching system. So I'll play it through at full speed again. So just watch the behaviors of the defensive players, how they make decisions based off the ball. Any of the in runners, any of those decoy runners become almost irrelevant as the ball starts getting passed. So how did we start to develop this system of ball watching? Because it wasn't the one that we had in when we first went there. And we came up with a defensive framework. Now, this is mine. I wouldn't give this to the players. This is very much me getting my ideas out on a piece of paper. And I might pull some of this and give it to the players, but it's a bit of a word fest, so I wouldn't give it to the players. So what we decided on after watching the players and discussing with them is we would focus on these three areas. So our fold speed, numbers around the corner to create width early, our reset speed to get on the line, and sighting the ball. So just as we spoke about there, how do we use the ball? And all of us in the defense use one thing to cue our decision-making: speed of release. So we explode off the line, and then we search and connect using the ball. Okay, so a lot of things in there, but for the first 3 tours, so that was 4 internationals, and this is all we worked on. We prioritized what we were going to do and focused on this. So we gave them some really simple policies to work with, not because they couldn't grasp very complex policies, but because we were trying to change our behaviors. So we gave them a really simple fold policy to start with, which was folding 3 in the middle and 2 on the outside, unless we committed 2 into the ruck, and then it was 2 in and 2 round. So that was as simple as we made it, just to allow us to move quickly. So we gave them that on day 1. We also gave them a folding sequence. So we were going to fold wide to narrow. So we'd fold like that. Okay. And then we talked about spacing between players. So that's all we gave them. And we showed them the videos that we've just seen there. So once again, I'll come out of this because it'll be a bit choppy if we go in there. So what did day one look like? Well, it was in the snow, which is not very usual in Shawnigan Lake in April, but it was snowing. So this was the first time we'd worked together as a team. We'd done a lot of work off the field to talk about how we connect, how we fold. And it's a really simple drill, just getting them folding around the corner, connecting and getting off the line. And that's it. It's very, very simplistic. So just watch it here. Get pulled around the corner, we fold, and then we come off the line and try to put pressure on. And that's all we were trying to do. Fold one more time, and then we're done. And that's as simple as we wanted to make it, because what we wanted to prioritize is how fast and effective we get round the corner. So watch it one more time. We fold open. We connected. So the fourth person was pulling them round. And then what we wanted to do is we all wanted to start searching for the ball because we were breaking behaviors because they were looking up. And we wanted to use the ball to cue our line speed. So we spent about 10 minutes on this, maybe less than 10 minutes on this drill. And then from this, we started to put them, and obviously we did a little bit more talking, a little bit more working and teaching. We started to put it into, some little games, 15 on 15, just to see if these behaviors would stick. And we could see already that and it's the team in the yellow that we're looking at. They're still, now you can see that we're still breaking behaviors here, because if you watch their language on the line, they're pointing up. Okay, which was fine. Okay, we're pointing up here, which was fine as long as they then go back to trying to search for the ball. So this was the biggest piece for me. They then come off the line, but the priority was trying to get around the corner there. We're trying to get around the corner as quick as possible, and we're trying to work. Reset onto the line as quick as possible, trying to search for the ball, all come off the line at the same time. We hit there, and then there's real urgency to get around the corner again, and we come off the line and we create pressure and we're searching for the ball. So given some of these ladies are world-class athletes, given within, 1-2 sessions, they were already trying to change how they were operating. And then we went.
Sorry, can I interrupt you for a sec? Just a quick clarification question on what a fold means. Can you maybe break that down?
So that's just how many players you get coming around the corner. So once you've hit, you would have a designated number of players folding or coming around the corner to connect to the rest of the defense. So you wouldn't just leave everyone on that side, because eventually as the attack is moving, you wouldn't have any players left at that side because there'd be collision. So it's just how many players we send around the corner to connect to the defense. So you can see here, this is an inter-squad. This is 3 days later. And you can see that they're really starting. And if you just look here, what we've got already, we've got them starting to look for the ball. We've got them all trying to see the same thing at the same time, which is great. And it's allowing them to come off the line and put real pressure. So you see Laura here making great informed decisions. She's watching the ball. She just bypasses that. And we come up and we create real pressure. So awesome work by Laura there. We see the same thing happening here. What we're looking for, we're all trying to sight the ball. Okay, so we can all see the same thing happen at the same time and make decisions as a team. We come off the line, once again, bypass the ball, and we put real pressure on them. So already after 3 or 4, and this was week, I think it was still week 1, we were in there. We start to see these pieces that we're trying to put in. We're trying to see the fold. So going back to this, our fold speed and our reset speed is great. And we're starting to sight the ball to cue our line speed, but we're also using it to make decisions. So starting to see those behaviors come through really, really thick. 2 seconds, sorry, just to make sure that. So now we see it, we went to New Zealand, and then we're looking at it again now. What does it look like in training for us? How are we repeating these behaviors? And we can see that how fast they're starting to move around the corner. So is that looking all right when I'm playing it, just in the PowerPoint, or is it choppy? It's okay, yeah, sweet. Okay, so you can see here how fast they're moving around the corner, and they're starting to get real width early and reset. So we're starting to get that understanding of speed all the time. And you can see on that, I think it's the first or second fold, how fast they move, and they actually set up quicker than the attack can set up, which is brilliant. Urgency to get around the corner, fold 3, they overfold 1 slightly. Okay, but at this point, I'm not really concerned about that. And then they're operating quicker than the attack can operate. So amazing stuff. And you can see from here, the overhead view of this, you can see how urgent they're starting to fold and how quick and their work rate to reset. Speed around the corner, even though they go backwards a little bit. And they're able to come off the line because of the speed they've folded, the speed they've reset, and they've set width really early. So as a defensive team, they're really starting to understand what they're doing. All based, once again, going back to this, fold speed, reset speed, sighting the ball, and using the ball for our decision making. So just, I don't know how to take the sound, or play with sound, so I don't know how to take the sound off it. So you can see now in an international match. And what's great about that, and I would play it again, but that's super loud, is we're starting to see the whole team making the same decision at the same time. But because they're all using the same cue to make those decisions, they're all moving off the line. They're all seeing the same thing happen at the same time, so they can start making informed decisions as a defensive unit, rather than just being player focused and go up and just try to tackle that player and have no idea what's going on either side of them. So they've created the width through the fold, they've got in their spaces, and now they're starting to see the ball. So that was we'd been working with them 4 weeks then. I think the ladies had done an absolute bang up job in terms of buying into what I was trying to do, because like I said, it was a big sell, it was a really hard sell to start with. And I think the most pleasing thing for me was, and I'm just going to show you a clip here, is we managed to hold Italy out for I think it was 24 phases. Now, after I've showed you this, I'll kind of be critical of that as well, and I'll speak to like the next piece that we'd want to do. So this is the game against Italy. I think we were just up at this point, and this was about 5 minutes before half time. Now, what I'd just like you to watch is, one, the things we've been working on. So not the additional pieces, not the work on the floor or anything like that, but the bits we've been really working on. Are they folding? Are they resetting at speed? Are they getting off the line and then folding again? And are they using the ball to inform their decision making? So I'll just run it through. It's about a 1.5-minute video. Okay, so I think it was either 22 or 27. I can't remember how many phases. So amazing work by them. Everything, when we go back to that, we look at these 3 areas. I think we can tick those off. But being super critical of what we were doing, we'd have to say that these are the pieces that we need to do next. And that was the next evolution of our defense. Now we've got our fold. Now we can create width. Now we can create line speed. What's the next piece? If we'd have gone onto this piece too early, we'd have lost the real focus on what we wanted to do to develop our defensive identity and what we felt we could be really effective defensively. And that was creating the wall, folding, reset speed, and watching the ball to make decisions. So I've packed in a lot there, and I know I've sped talk for 32 minutes now. So happy, once Aaron's done his bit, happy to kind of clarify any of those pieces when we move out. But just thought I'd share that journey and then where we got to within that kind of 3-month period. Okay, guys, that's me done.
Thanks, Dave. So we do have a few questions that maybe I'll touch on here. And Aaron, if you're going to actually cover some of this or you want to jump in, feel free, so that they don't have to be specifically for Butch. But first question is, are you concerned about dog legs appearing in the defensive line as it moves forward, creating gaps? Should there be a solid lineup together?
For me, because we're trying to create that wall, and there are different defensive systems where you can shoot up in the line. We talk a lot about how we work as a 3, so ball, hunt, and jam. And in this system that we put in, we wanted them to move up as a one defensive unit. They like to shoot up on the outside, and if they're making a decision based off what they see, I wasn't going to hold them back. But what we want to be able to do, and this talks to how we're all seeing the same thing at the same time. That if I'm always searching for the ball inside me, and I'm not staring, I can still, my field of vision is still like this. Okay, the next person is looking at the same thing I'm looking at, and the person inside me knows that I can see what they're doing as well. So I actually never leave that person inside me because I can see what they're doing. Okay, the only time that I move up is when the ball's passed in front of me, and then I either move up onto the person I'm looking at with the ball, or the ball moves past me, and then I connect to the next person. So if we've got our interactions between each player right, and we understand our fields of vision and where we're moving, we should never leave each other behind, either inside or outside the ball. So yes, in my opinion, we should stay connected unless there's a specific reason for moving out, decision making or tactical, and that's how I would do it. Those fields of vision and staying connected.
Thanks. I know we're in this one.
Yeah, there's another question here, Butch. So someone's asked, are you doing away with the traditional posting guard at the ruck? It seems like as they're folding, they're hoping to be able to catch a quick pick and go as if they're running from behind the breakdown.
Yeah, so there's multiple ways you can do a fold, moving around the ruck, and neither are right or wrong. The reason that I don't go kind of 1, 2, 3 is I feel it's too slow, this level. So, maybe at a junior level, where you want to get, like the put, whatever you call it, guard, shield A or post, whatever it is. Okay, yeah, maybe you want to do that. It's the easiest way of doing it. But in terms of speed, if I go 1 there, and then by the time I've got that second person in, the ball's away. And that means that I haven't been able to create width early. So it means my line is shorter and my line speed can't be as hard. Because the shorter the line, the easier it is to get the ball on the outside, and the less speed you can have on your line. Whereas if I go 3 first to here, that means everyone outside me can move early. So as soon as I've moved to that third position, okay, everyone outside has moved and stopped. So that line is now set. And then the second person comes in. Now, what a lot of people say is, well, what if the scrum half breaks? At this level, when they're trying to get to the second defender, if you put post in first, and this is the scrum half will get to here before any defenders in anyway. Whereas if you've got 3 coming around the corner, that third person's here, that second comes in, they're trying to get to there, that scrum half gets got anyway. So I think 1 might be a long-winded answer to that, but I think 1, it's the level that you're working at. So the junior players might be, you just want to make it really, really simple for them, as long as they're working to get around the corner. But for me, you need to think about the effect of the fold on the line and getting width, and how that affects your ability to defend that area as well. And that's why we fold as a 3 or a 2, depending on where we are in the park, around the corner like that. Answer the question?
Yeah, definitely answer the question. If Damien, if you have anything to add to that or any follow up to what Butch just explained, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A and we'll get back to it.
This next one's probably a good one to build on that. It asks about player fitness and does that need to improve with this system? It says it looks very taxing cardio wise.
Any defensive system, if you want to do it right, is taxing. Like I said, there's two people in one every phase of defense executing skill. The rest of it is movement skills and how fast you can get into position. And that probably was more taxing because we hadn't focused on how we take seconds away from them, either on the floor or on the feet. So we hadn't worked at all on, not just stealing the ball, but actually slowing the ball down, because our priorities were how we fold and get set. But if you're not fit, you can't really defend. That's just the way of the world, because it is so taxing in terms of how fast you have to come backwards and forwards and how fast you move. And if those movement skills come under pressure or break, and you don't move when someone else connects to you, and then you end up like this, well, immediately then you're further away from this person. And if that keeps happening every phase, before you know it, there's holes all over your defensive system. So I think if you're not working your defensive, and you can do your fitness in the defensive system, it doesn't mean necessarily you have to be running up and down the field. But if you've got them doing 2-minute drills where they're just defending for 2 minutes, but you're really challenging what their effort is. And effort for me is how fast we get around the corner, how fast we move laterally, how fast we can reset on the line, how fast we can get off the line. So you can quantify the effort and not just say you've got to work harder, because what does that actually mean? Or what does hard work mean? But if you're quantifying where you want them to work hard in terms of the forwards, can you get around the corner and fold quicker than the other forward pod can come around and attack? Well, there's a little internal race you can have. You can challenge their ability to work. But in terms of fitness, you've got to be fit in any defensive system to make it work properly.
So this next one is kind of a two-parter. So conceptually as a team versus literally as a unit, how are you defining roles and responsibilities prior to and after the pass?
Prior to, okay.
Kind of a communication part.
Yeah. So we talk about the team as a whole and spacing and zones and watching, and that's just so we get kind of unified spacing, and we talk about what that looks like. And obviously you can't have cones on the field, so you have to have spatial perception of where you're doing, and that just comes through repeatedly having it, but also having your field of vision right. So if I'm looking up here, I have no idea the space either side of me and where I'm connected to people. Whereas if I can be looking here and I can see the person beside me, I get a gauge of kind of where they are to me, and we can stay connected through our vision. So team-wise, we need to kind of have those pieces in place, or whatever structure you're using. But as the ball's moved, we have 3 designations outside of ruck defense. And designations that I use are ball, hunt, and jam. So ball is pretty self-explanatory. If I'm on the ball and I'm defending on the ball, I'm on the ball. The hunt is the person inside the ball. So as soon as the ball goes past your face, or as soon as the ball's passed from the person in front of you, you then become the hunt, and then you close space on the inside. So you're, if this is the person inside and the person on ball, as soon as they move up, you're starting to close space on the inside. So if they step back inside, bang, they get got straight away. We can't, and this can be an effort thing. If we go up like this and that person has to move out and this person doesn't work hard on the inside, you create massive gaps. So as the ball's moved, this person on the inside will come and defend the inside shoulder. Going back to our policies, we always defend the inside shoulder of the next defender, okay? And then the person on the outside stays neutral. And what I mean by that is, if that's the person on ball and that's the person on the outside, okay, which is jam, we call them the jam, they have to come up and they have to stay neutral like this, because as soon as they step in and do this early, it's a cue for them to pass, okay? And then you get disconnected from the next defender. So we come up neutral, and then depending on what happens today, we can either move in and help defend with neutral hips, or we can stay out and then we can move again. So we use those 3 designations: hunt, ball, jam. And as the ball's moved, the designations change. We have a few other ones, but they're the basic kind of mortar that holds the wall together as we move.
So the second part is how the team in the moment communicates the need or action. And Angela commented on that. She noticed it seemed to be the same voice communicating, but wasn't sure.
So that's the voice you can hear is Emily Tatosi,
Mhm.
and we don't have a line call, but she likes to scream the line call because that's what motivates her. She's a great communicator, massive amount of energy, like more energy than any player I've ever worked with. And but we don't need a line call if we're all looking at the same thing. So we sight the ball and the ball releases us off the line. So, and it happens the same if the ball's in the line out, we're looking for the ball to be released off the top of the line out, and that's when we move. We don't wait for the ball to be in the air. We move as soon as the ball's in play. So that initiates us moving forward. And then there's the interactions between it. So as you come up, you would be talking to the person outside you, let's go. We can have a 100% call, which means we're getting off the line really quickly. But also as we're defending inside, remember going back to our policies, we're defending inside the ball all the time. I'm going to give the person on the ball real confidence to go forward, because as the ball moves past me, I'm going to tell them I'm hunting for the ball. So immediately they know if someone steps back inside, they step back into me, which gives them so much confidence to go up. Now we have to have that communication, because as soon as we go quiet in the line, people stop moving off the line, and that's when we get poor line speed, and then they start eating up meters. So and I hope that answers, and if it doesn't, put another message in, and I can clarify a bit. But the communication we need are the roles and responsibilities as they get past the people. So if I'm the hunt now, I'm telling, like, Aaron, go up, I'm hunting on your inside, I'm hunting on your inside. That gives the person on the ball, massive amount of confidence to move up, because they know I'm with them. Okay, as the roles moved and then I become the hunt, I say the same thing to the person outside me, and then we keep going. We do have other calls in terms of softening our line speed, negative line speed, and things like that. But the simplistic thing in between players is that we also have a push-pull system where we pull players around the corner. And it all depends how much communication you want, but those little pieces in between each player are the most important in my view. Hope that answered it.
I think we're good. So Aaron, we'll let you get started if you want to pull up your slides. And if you have more questions, folks, for Dave, you can still throw them in there, and we'll have a bit of time for questions from them at the end. So, all right, take it away, Aaron.
Okay, can you see the slides? All good? Excellent. Nice work, Butch.
You're right.
I think you'll find there'll be some similarities. Sorry, I'm just trying to move. Hold on, let's do this one more time. Give me a second. No, it's not going to move. Okay. Okay. You'll notice some similarities between what Butch has presented and what I'm going to present, which I think is a really good thing. So what I'm going to do is present. Butch talked a lot about principles and policies and philosophies, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try and simplify a little bit and maybe catch some areas that I think are important in the development side of the game, as well as the higher performing side of the game. I've recently done this over 3 days with the Canada under 18 camp out here in Western Canada. And it's something that I often use with my school. So I was sat with some leaders of the team last year, and a lot of the conversation before we started the meeting was around Drive to Survive, the Netflix show. And I found out within the team, there's actually quite a passion for Formula One racing. So this year I'm going to be rolling out a theme around rebel racing. So that you'll notice that in the slides. But one of the first things that I want to start with is some of you have maybe seen a game model before. A lot of them, if you see them in documents, are quite cyclical. So a game model would be you've either got the ball in attack, or you've just lost the ball and you're transitioning to defense, and then you're in defense, and then you've just got the ball back, and then you're transitioning back into attack. So the game kind of flows like that. And then somewhere in amongst that, you'll have kind of contests of the game or moments of the game, like scrum, lineouts, kickoffs, any kind of restart. So this is more of a continuum example of a game model. On the left, I faded a little bit of some areas of the attack, and I'm really going to focus on the right-hand side, which is the defensive perspective of the game. So there's a couple of things that I think are important. There's a couple of different ways that you're going to get to defend within the game. And so you can see the first one there and they're ranked red, amber, green, and gold. So red is probably the most trickiest situation you're going to defend in the game, which is a scramble. So the other team have just created a line break, and you've got to make a tackle, you've got to slow the game down. But it's one of the hardest components of the game to defend in, because the attacker really in control, and everybody's got to go from one mode to another. So I think it's important within our defensive coaching that we start to understand, do we have any kind of principles for a scramble? And the first one might be, and this changes team to team, but it might be somebody make a tackle, because if you don't, they're going to score. And once they've made that tackle, it might go into something like Butch was saying around making contacts last more than 3 seconds. So if you can slow the game down, you can reorganize, you can get people behind the ball, and you've got an opportunity to reset the game and go again. So I think it's important within our within our teams, we understand what scramble is. And scramble isn't just turn around and watch somebody hopefully make a tackle. It's getting back behind the ball so that when that tackle does happen, we can get to it. Deny would be moments in the game where maybe there's more attackers than there are defenders. There are other words that are used in that. It might be jockey, it might be soft, lots of different words, but ultimately they're in a better position than you, and you're going to have to move some things around to create that even game, or even give you the advantage again. So what does that look like for your team? If you recognize that there's more attackers in front of you than there are defenders, what are you going to do? The dictate is the flip side of that. So you've got more defenders than they've got attackers. What are we doing next? Like, what is it? What principles are we going to go to? How are we going to try and defend? And the win is win the ball back. What are the different ways we can get the ball back off the attack? I am a huge fan that I think there are multiple ways of getting the ball back that we miss. If I ask young players, often they'll tell me the breakdown is the number one place to get the ball back. I would disagree. I think it's a way. I also think it's the most penalized way in the game. And I think it's a really risky way of getting the ball back. So what are the other ways? And I'll touch on some of those as we go through the presentation. At the bottom there, I've got some simple principles around where you might find yourself within a defensive line. So are you close to the ruck? And if you are, like we just talked about there, if somebody picks and goes around the fringes of a ruck, what does that kind of defending look like? Transition for me is, as Butch showed in those videos, maybe the third, fourth, fifth, sixth defender in that defensive line. What's their role? What do they need to bring to the defensive line? If you find yourself on the end of the line, what's your role? And then cover is those players in the backfield, and what is their role within the system? It's not just hoping that the 13 or the 14 or the 12 people in front of them do their job and they're just the safety net. They've got a job to do as well. So that is my game model in defense. And I just wanted to show you something different. If you haven't thought about it, maybe it's something you want to think about. And when you find yourself in the position of a scramble, for example, what does your team do? What would you like? What are the behaviors you'd like to see from your players? Okay. My theme, like I said, came from Drive to Survive. I've also got kind of 3 concepts. So when I was in the camp with the under-18s, I had 3 days to coach the team and try and give them a little bit of development, but it was also a little bit about identification. So this is Silverstone Racetrack in the UK. And if anybody knows anything about Silverstone, there are kind of 3 sections. The first section is quite hard because there's a lot of turns. You've obviously got the start of the race, there's jockeying for position, and you've got a lot of really tight turns. So that's a hard section. The second section is fast. You'll see down the right-hand side there in the blue, from corner 7 through to about corner 15, it's pretty much open up the throttle and go. So I've got hard as in hard work, fast as in moving fast, and then obviously the yellow section is about finishing and getting across the finish line. So I've turned those into kind of defensive themes when I'm delivering this content on the field. So let's have a look at some of that stuff. Before we get there, in the last webinar that I did about 2 weeks ago with you guys in Ontario, I talked about tactical periodization. The game model is kind of loosely attached to this, but I wanted to show if you have a team for an entire week, or if you get lots of contact with your team, how we actually theme all of these days. So one of the questions that just came in the chat was, is fitness an important part of defense? The answer was yes. And it's why I've actually started the week with finish. So finish for me is about getting up and down the field. It's about when we get the ball back, how do we take advantage of that chaos? So we're developing our endurance capacity on that Monday of the day because the players have had most of Friday to recover from a game, Saturday and Sunday off when they're in a school environment. So Monday, we're going to move quickly and we're going to develop our endurance capacity. So that's a finish day. Tuesday is a hard day, so more of a combat emphasis. We're going to look at defense and breakdown and ball carry. And then on Wednesday is the fast day. So it's more of an attack focus, but within that attack, I can still do some defensive coaching. And that defensive coaching is under the theme of fast. If you want to know more, there's a really great academic paper there by T et al. In 2018 that's taken this concept of tactical periodization, as I said in the last webinar, from a lot of Portuguese and Spanish soccer coaches, and now probably more famously in rugby, used prior to the 2019 World Cup with Eddie Jones. Okay, so a hard session. Hard for me is about hard work. So that would be the theme. And for me, there are a couple of different things within that hard work. It's about getting defensive balance. So you want to get kind of the right chess pieces in the right area. You're going to have to defend from set piece. And I don't think you can build a successful defense if you can't defend off set piece. And I also don't think that we can defend if we've got our slower moving players against faster moving players. So we're going to have to want to move those players around. There's lots of different ways of referring to that. But essentially, you want to get probably a couple of backs on the edge of your defensive line. You probably want your forwards in the middle of the defensive line, and you probably want some skilled players in those cover positions. So my hard session would be about how do we get to defensive balance, especially working off set piece. So from scrum and from line out, how do we manage that first phase to give us a chance? Because if you can't stop the attack off first phase, you're going to really struggle in defense for the rest of the game. The other thing for hard work for me is the tackle area. So we've come from set piece, the game's now moving, and if we aren't able to have good tackle technique, which for me, most of the time is under a good shoulder contact under the ball with the attacking player finishing on their back so that you can threaten the ball. The weakest position for an attacking player is lying on their back on the ground. So if we can get them into those positions once we've made the tackle. And then some of the other skills I'm looking at, and I know Butch and I have had conversations about this, is ball off the ground skills. So if a tackle is made, or if there's a competition for the ball where players are standing on their feet, there's a number of different ways you can still get the ball back. So you can rip the ball out, you can hold a player up, you can tackle a player into touch, you can charge kickdowns, you can win aerial battles. And more recently brought into the game, you can hold players up over the try line, and that gives you a goal line dropout, which I would consider a turnover as well. So within our hard work session, we're going to be focusing on all of those things. So within the under 18s camp, I had 30 players. So I would have a skill zone where we're working on tackle technique and different ways to get the ball back. And in the game zone, I'm working from set piece to try and work to get into a balanced defense and looking at those defensive roles. And if I've got fairly good understanding by the end of the session, then I'd be pretty happy. In the last webinar, I talked about how I themed my games around countries. So this one for me, I would play Fiji in this. I would play Fiji with the set piece starter. So Fiji is a game that's looking for offloads in attack and looking to choke and rip the ball out in defense. So that would be my starter, and then I would probably adapt it from there. And some of the questions that I'd be asking the players, or some of the understanding that I want them to know by the end of a cycle of doing hard sessions would be, do you know what defensive balance is? And do you know why we use it? What are the 4 different phase play roles? So do you know, if you find yourself next to a ruck, do you know what your role is? Or a transition or an edge or a cover defender? And do you understand with the number on your back, which ones you'll most likely find yourselves in, so that you're finding kind of good anchors on the field to make sure that you're in the right positions? So do you know what the 4 defensive roles are? Do you know how we defend off scrums? So you might have different policies around how are you using your 9 from the scrum? How are you using your back row? Who's defending in the backfield? So do you understand how your defense changes, whether the scrum is on the left, the right, and in the middle of the field? Do you understand if the attack gives you all of the attackers on one side 5 and 1, 4 and 2, 3 and 3, or even 2, 2 and 2. So if the attack shows you a picture, do you know what those numerical clues and cues, how are you going to match that, and what's the plan? And I think I would do the same as well from line out. So how do we get defensive balance? And again, how are we setting up? So if it's 5 people in the line out, we've got a couple of forwards in the back line, how are we managing them? Are we going to match them forwards to forwards? Are we going to put them inside our first back, outside our first back? What's the role of a blindside winger? All of these questions I will be going through in this kind of theme session. Okay, second one is our fast session. So Butch talked a lot around moving quickly to get into position early is a huge, huge factor of the game. If your defense is set before the attack is set, you're in control. The hardest thing for a defense is the attack getting quick ball and being set before you. So how do we condition players to get into good positions early so that they're able to be in control when they get there? Some of the other fast factors would be our line speed, so how quickly we're moving off the line. Butch talked a lot about that, sighting the ball, hard couple of first steps. What do we do when the ball is in the air? What do we do when the ball is in someone's hands? Those would be all factors that I would talk about within our line speed. We've had a conversation about holding and folding. So holding and folding are kind of the antithesis of each other. So folding is moving people around the ruck to the far side to join the defensive line. Holding would be keeping people on the same side, just in case the attack comes back the way that they came from. So understanding when you would do what needs to be done. I would do, in this session, I would do kick chase. And I would also do, I would flip it on its head. So in our defense, we want to be fast, but the last thing we want to is the attack to be fast. So I'd also have players looking at how do we slow the ball down. If we make a tackle and it goes into a breakdown situation, how do we firstly slow that breakdown down legally so that we can organize our defensive line? And would we look to influence the ball there, or would we just look to influence space? And space, I mean, the space above the ball while staying on your feet. So I would include that into a fast session. Again, going back to the theme games, I would play a game I call South Africa on this one, which is a full field game. I want to be full field because I want to be moving quickly, high meters per minute. And within that game, this game is a kick to score game, but it's also, you can play 3 phases inside your own half and then you must kick. So we're going to get some first line speed, we're going to get some hold and fold, and we're also going to get some kick chase if someone kicks the ball. So that's how I would set up a fast session during my week. And again, these are the questions that I'll be asking players to check for understanding. So do you understand, if the ball goes to the ground, do you understand how to slow that ball down legally? Do you know how to win that space? And if you stay in that space long enough, do you understand that the attacker now going to have to bring more attackers to get rid of you, which means less people we're going to have to defend in the next phase of play? Do you understand how to get into position early and be ready before the attack? Line speed, a measure of line speed. It's not the only measure, but I'm not sure, Butch, if you spoke about this one, but trying to get hold of an attacker within 2 passes or less. So for example, 9 to 10, 10 to 12, by the time the 12 has got the ball, we should be in that space. That would be relatively good line speed or a measure of it, to make sure that we're always putting pressure on that second pass. And then we talked about hold and fold. Do we know how to balance the space across the field? Third session would be a finish session. So in this one, again, kind of repeating what Butch has said, but I'm talking about spacing alignment. Spacing as in good spacing, as in comfortable spacing. I have a lot of players come to me and say, how far away do I need to be? And I think you can just ask the question, if we stand this far apart, do you feel comfortable? If the answer is no, then you probably need to get a little bit closer. Butch has given kind of some rough estimates there of meters, where it's closer towards the breakdown and gets a little bit wider so that you can get that 80% coverage. But again, he also talked about alignment isn't always if there's a person in front of you, that's where you stand. It's really more about the spacing between you than aligning to the attack. In a finish session, it's about getting the ball back and going into that transition phase as quickly as possible and taking advantage of chaos kind of within that first 10 to 20 seconds when you've got the ball back, however you manage to do that. So in this kind of session with finish, I'm looking at turnover tries. This is a lesson that I've learned from the last 2 seasons where I've done some analysis on my teams, and it's an area because I haven't looked at it enough. We probably haven't scored enough turnover tries. So turning pressure into points the other way. And I think kind of that NFL mentality of intercepting the ball and taking it for a touchdown, we have to have that same mentality in rugby where if we rip the ball out of somebody's hands, we then have to transition much more quickly to turn that pressure into points. So within a finish session, again, if I was doing a skill zone, I would revisit all those different ways to get the ball back. In this session, I would play a game like New Zealand or All Blacks. In this game, I think I mentioned it on the last webinar, the defensive team are New Zealand, the other team are whoever they like to be. And the New Zealand team, as soon as they get a turnover within that game, they have 1 phase to score. So they're going to take risks no matter where they are on the field. So the other team, whoever they are, get as many phases as they want to score a try. But the moment New Zealand get the ball back, they have to play. So you saw in that, there was a really good clip that Butch showed there where the Canadian girls got a turnover and immediately somebody was looking for somebody in the backfield to give them time and space to figure out where they were going to attack next. So those would be some of the principles that I'd be looking at in a finish session. And ultimately, I think the visualization of all of this is building pressure within a system. So a defensive line and defensive unit is a system. So here's a slide that I've come up with before I get to the learning objectives. So defenders on their feet and comfortable spacing, which talked about that, about building pressure. I'm going to talk about valves, and then finally score points. So taking advantage of chaos when you get the ball back, have a go within that first 10 to 20 seconds to take advantage of chaos, a fractured field, players still scrambling to get into good positions to defend that transition. Okay, so last bit. So with most of my teams, when I do visualization with them, I visualize pipes, valves, and pressure. So the first thing that we're going to look to do is when we've just lost the ball and there's a scrum. So we're going to put pressure in the scrum. Depending on how good you are as a scrummaging team, you know, if you're the UBC men's team, watching them yesterday, you probably turn that dial up a little bit more to the red. But for the team that I'm involved with, we're probably just on the red. We're not that dominant in the scrum, but we're going to put some pressure on. In the line out, we're going to compete really hard. We've looked a lot at how do we kind of make decisions around clues and cues of what the attack are giving us at the line out. So we're going to put a lot of pressure on in the line out. And then also at restarts, we're either going to put territory pressure in and try and create the first tackle inside the 22, or we're going to kick to compete. And I see a lot of teams kind of going in that middle space where you're not really kind of cranking the valves and keeping the pressure in the system. So once we've got through that first phase set piece, we're going then into kind of phase play defense. And the defense that I like to use, and I'm sure Butch as well, is we're going to come hard off the line. We're going to come fast, and line speed, especially when I'm working with a lot of the teams, senior men's teams out here that I work with, we're coming with line speed. So we're going to start on side. We're going to sight the ball. We use the ball to come off the line as quickly as we possibly can, take time and space. Once we get into that area, if the ball doesn't go to ground, then we're going to use those off the ground skills. So we're going to intercept passes. We're going to choke people. We're going to rip the ball out. We're going to charge down kicks. And if the tackle does go to ground, we're going to put a lot of pressure by completing as many tackles as we can underneath the ball, with the ball carrier finishing on their back and being vulnerable. And then the last piece then, if the tackle has gone to ground and we haven't won the ball quickly, then we're going to disrupt the ball, we're going to slow the ball down, and we're going to force attackers to commit to that breakdown so that we've got less people to defend in the next phase. And I think if you can do that, it gives you time to organize, takes the pressure off you and more pressure off them. And you just kind of go back through the system. And the analogy is that if you give away a cheap penalty at a breakdown, you just open a valve and all the pressure comes out, and there's no defensive pressure left in the system. If you miss a tackle and there's a line break, you open a valve and the pressure leaks out of the system. And now you've got to try and scramble to get that pressure back in the system. So that's that's the analogy that I've used with my players, is that when we're defending, we just need to be patient. We need to keep as many valves as we possibly can closed. And ultimately, teams will kick you the ball back. Okay. I'm going to pause there.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. So if anyone has any questions for Aaron or just in general about defense for either of these guys, throw them into the Q&A. We did have one clarification for Dave that we'll come back to. We're just asking if the ball gets passed 3 times, will there be 3 hunters, or once a new hunter calls that roll, does the previous hunter then back off? Oh, you're still on mute there, Dave. Oh, nope. Good, I think.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So all it is as the ball's moved across the field, as we come up, instead of just staying there, we just start filling inside. So if this person comes up and then the ball's moved to that person, they then hunt on the inside. The ball's moved past this person, they then hunt on the inside, and we just start moving across the field. And all you'll do is, as the ball's moved, you'll move across the field and then reset. So all we don't want to do, and it's just a way of making sure that we can reset quickly, because if we go up and stop and no one fills inside the ball, then as soon as the ball stops, we'll have to race in and get it. So we're just filling inside the ball all the time, the direction it goes. It also speaks to how fast we can fold, because if we don't fill inside the ball and then the collision's here, we're not going to get around the corner quickly. So we're just trying to fill inside the ball, fold quickly, get set, and then go. So everyone's just filling in inside the ball as the ball's moved. Hope that answers the question.
Hopefully that clarifies a bit. For maybe either of you, what are your thoughts on a shooter in defense? Seems quite popular now. And yes, does the system you play affect the choice of a shooter on defense?
Yeah, I can have a stab at that. I think the answer is it depends. And what it depends on is intentionality. So if you don't know, if nobody else around you knows that you're going to shoot out of the line, I think that could be a bit of a problem. But there are in certain teams and circumstances where, I've got another game called Wales. And in 2019, Wales often employed a shooter, and it was typically their 9. And the 9 just had kind of free license to just fly out of the line. And everybody else knew that, so they could fill in that really vulnerable gap behind them. So I have a game called Wales, where if one player on the defensive team is a shooter, and if they can touch a player in possession of the ball, it's an automatic turnover. I've known a good friend of mine's coaching University Women's Rugby out here in Western Canada, and he often uses it because a lot of teams don't really expect it, and he's found it quite successful. So yeah, to kind of go full circle, it's all about the intentionality. If one person shoots out of the line and nobody else knows about it, it wasn't planned, it's not strategic, it could be a problem.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Butch?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think I think the other piece is how you're making that decision as well. So I agree with everything Aaron said. And how are you making those decisions based off the ball, based off depth, that depth perception. But yeah, totally agree with what Aaron said there.
Yeah. So we can only go rogue if it's in the plan.
Yeah.
Can you explain a bit more on slowing down a tackle? Either one of you.
Yeah, I can go again. From what I've seen in both men's and women's rugby, typically when 2 defenders make a tackle, it often slows the ability of the attack to create quicker ball. Not to say that they won't get quick ball, but I often see that with that second player involved, they can often start to influence the ball. And when they do that, ball placement gets a little bit slower, or an arriving attacker might have to think about removing that player. But also slowing down a tackle is kind of getting in the space above the ball. So not necessarily jackling the ball and lifting it up, but almost making yourself a threat over the ball that you might be able to pick it up. But if not, you're going to stay in that space. And then one attacker has to clear you out and they're not effective. So another one has to come and clear you out and they're not effective. And a third one comes in and suddenly the attack have got 5 people in that breakdown and the defense has probably got 1. It slowed that ball down and now you have extra defenders and less attackers. So that's kind of the the principle of it all is making the attack have to stop and do something, which in turn slows the attack down.
Yeah, I've got to say, like, just to build on what Aaron said there, every tackle can't be dominant. So there's no team in the world that has every tackle dominant. So Aaron was talking about slowing the ball down there and pulling more guys in, and eating more bullets into the ruck. But also, if you're, and this is just giving your players more tools in the toolbox to use, is you can lose meters but gain seconds. So you can get underneath the ball and hold them up and not necessarily win the ball. But as an attack coach, you're trying to get -3 second ball all the time. So you're trying to get quick or lightning quick balls. So the reverse of that as a defense coach is if you can't steal it, you're trying to get 5-6 second ball. So on the floor, if you can be dominant, knock them backwards, get hands on, make it a mess, make it a fight over the ball, awesome. But also if you've lost meters, you can get underneath it, hold it up, take them offline, turn them, make it hard, change their body shape as they go into the floor, etc., and just increase the number of seconds that they need to win it. And that allows you then to get round the corner quicker and set. So when the ball does come out, you're organized, it can move up and create even more pressure. So I think there's two different ways of influencing the speed of ball or influencing the ball. Is on feet and on ground, but it doesn't always have to be. And we all want to hit people, don't get me wrong, in defense, but sometimes you have to understand that you can be passive but still affect the ball.
No, that was a really good explanation. We have another question here. Between those three roles, ball hunt and jam, do you find one more difficult for players to improve at or learn?
Yeah, the jam on the outside is really hard for every player at every level. So I'll speak to the women's team. That was the one thing that took us the longest to get, and the reason for that is it's the role that takes the most decision making, and the role where you have to make decisions last minute if you're going to execute properly. And what I mean by that is if that's the jam and that's the person on ball, it's what usually happens is that person steps in really quickly because they want to make the hit. And then good players will just pass and someone will come through that gap. And what we try to do is get them to stay neutral. So hips being neutral as they move up. And what you're having to do is edge in and think, right, well, this person's going to start engaging. If I looked at their body shape, their behaviors, they took the ball, they're going to engage, or if they got the ball and they're trying to manipulate us. And then we've got to stay kind of square and edge in and then use the ball and then move out straight away. So making that decision under fatigue at pace is extremely difficult to do if they're not repping it out in games, in drills, being put under that pressure, making mistakes and learning from mistakes. But that role is an extremely difficult role in any defensive system. And it's made even harder if you're not all on the same page if you're looking up, trying to make decisions based off that in front of you rather than what's happening here. It's an extremely difficult role to execute.
Yeah, I totally agree. That would have been my response as well. And I think especially as a lot of defenders are being taught now kind of this umbrella defense where we're trying to get players higher on the outside. But as we saw with the ball watching stuff, the moment you start to get in front, then your vision goes and you see things later or not at all. Then you just start to make bad decisions or you panic. And then you jam in and you leave the space for somebody to go through. It takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of cohesion because you want to trust that person inside you that they're going to affect the ball enough to not get that offload away. Because typically that's going to be the offload line from the outside. So yeah, it takes an awful lot of work.
Yeah. The other piece to that is on the outside of the defense. This is one of the reasons I'm adamant that we've all got to see what everyone else is doing is if that person has to jam in and I don't have an understanding of what's going on inside me, that person will stay there. We jam in and immediately we're separating defenders, and a good attack will break that down. So as that person has to jam in, if they've made that decision, back that decision, but then everyone else has to mirror and come with them. So if they try to pass out or it's an offload, we close that down. Even if it's a wrong decision, we close that down and then we readjust and we get back in our defensive system. So on the outside, the ripple effect is quite big along the rest of the line, whether it's a right or wrong decision.
Awesome. Those are really great explanations. Either one of you, actually, I'd like both of your inputs. How can you explain how you feel as a team and not just as individuals on the defensive line? I'd like to kind of hear both of your inputs.
How we feel. Can you say that one again for me, please?
Sorry, how you feel inside as a team, not just as individuals.
Feel inside.
Yeah, so when you're wrapping around the breakdown.
I think, Butch, what you've
On the
kind of
fold,
touched on
folding.
already.
Yeah, your fold.
Oh, on the fold, yeah. I think me and Aaron are pretty similar, so I'll go, and Aaron might have a different view. As we fold round, defense is a lot about repetition and movement skills and understanding how we move. So first of all, we have a push-pull system. So the person on the outside, so if there's a collision here, the person that's not used in the ruck becomes the pull. Okay, and they're going to pull people around the corner because name an action someone makes them work quicker. So I'd be like, Aaron, pull. As soon as I name an action him, he tends to move quicker around the ruck. What we've also got to do is we've also got to leave some space for them to fold into, which might sound counterintuitive because you're actually leaving space rather than defending it. So you kind of talk about how you make those decisions. And as they come round, they'll come round as a 3 and fill in. So as they're coming round, so that's the ruck, as they're coming round, they're starting to search for the ball as they're coming round the ruck. So if I'm looking here and I'm moving round, as I start to move around the ruck, my head's starting to turn. So as I'm moving around the ruck, I'm starting to see the ball. So once again, the sooner I can sight the ball, the better. And then as we get there, we know the third person is going to be, whatever you want, C, B, A. And when they're in place, and we have to get them in place first because we have designations of ways of working and they're not in place, they're always moot. So we get them in place and then we talk about, well, what are you defending there? So the first person closest to the ruck, who and what are you defending? What space and what scenarios can you defend? Well, you're going to defend the scrum half and you're going to defend anything just coming down here. Or if the ball goes out, you're the first person to put pressure on. Second person's probably going to be where the scrum half's trying to attack. So what does my movement look like? Do I come off the line if I see the scrum half attack? Well, no, probably not. I'm probably in a kind of a holding pattern and I move and the A will come inside and move with me. And then in some defenses, the third person is told to be the person opposite the first receiver. That's great if you want to do that. However, what if the first receiver is that far away? And what if the first receiver is that far away? Are you going to move your spacing and be dictated by the first receiver? So as Aaron was saying, we tend to have distances that you can kind of move between, be slightly fluid in between. And that person would be in charge of linking to the rest of the defense. So there are roles and responsibilities, but they're very much based off the scenario that comes next from that ball moving. So there's not one kind of role. It depends what happens next.
I think the only thing that I would add, often if you watch a higher level game, you'll see those players that aren't involved in that ruck as they leave the space. They're often giving signals with numbers. So if they say 2, they want 2 people to come around and fill that space. Sometimes you'll see 3. But if you watch that game kind of disconnect from where the ball is and watch defenders that are leaving the space, they're starting to call people in there. And if they can do it with names, then great. But often you'll see them hands up and they'll go 2 as they're pulling people out. So that's what that pull system is.
Oh, thanks, guys. So we're just getting near our end here. So I'll get us into a few of the rapid fire questions for you both. So what is something that you've learned recently or that you are excited to learn more about?
Go on, Aaron, you take that one. I'll need some time to think about that one.
Does it have to be defense related? Something that I've learned recently. Well, I guess I can share quickly. So I've started to measure. So within our game analysis, I've really started to measure getting into position early, which I've found to be a huge factor. So I have a traffic light system, again, going back to my theming around Formula One. So red, yellow, green. And I'll look at the percentage of, are we completely disorganized? Are we somewhat organized with a couple of people still moving? Or are we all set, kind of ready, watching, and ahead of the attack? And I'll just percentage that. So I'll look through the game. I'll look at how many instances we've got. And just by measuring that, I was able to increase the green by 20% in 4 games and decrease the red by about 15%. And you're always going to get some. Somebody takes a quick tap penalty, it's almost impossible to be ready for that kind of stuff, or a quick line-out throw. So you're always going to get some disorganized phases. But the moment you start, I think, measuring the stuff that you're saying is important. So for me, that was one of the most important. I just saw huge behavioral change, and it actually even then instigated some language. So players started communicating with each other about getting green, which was almost like a spark plug for players to get back 10 if they've just given a penalty away, or to get into position early, which I thought was pretty cool. So something that I learned recently and something I'm going to keep going for sure.
Yeah, mine would be probably, there's a few things away from defense in terms of critical reviewing and things like that I've been working quite hard with the teams. But probably the biggest thing that we've been working on outside what I've normally do is the kick chase structures. Pretty surprised how little some of these are coached in terms of, you know, how we get into defense from an attack, and what do they look like? Where does the, you know, how do the forwards fill in inside the first receiver? You know, how do we create that that defensive pressure afterwards? What does the kick straight look like from a ruck, from a mortar, like, et cetera, et cetera. So that was something that, you know, took me a little bit by surprise. So I started looking more into it with the teams. So that'd be something, yeah, that I've probably done more of in the last 4 or 5 months than I've done in years, probably.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. We have one more question here that I think we maybe have time for, and then I know Aaron's got to jump probably. How do you prepare the players if the attacking team attempts to take advantage of the fold and switches the direction of the ball? Is there anything specifically you do to prep them for that?
Yeah, I think if you've got your system right, then, you know, you're already connecting into the ruck. So the biggest thing is, you know, trying to push back on your policies to drive the decision making of the players, no matter what goes on. So if we're defending the ball first, and that's where we're defending, we have to connect to the ruck first. So that's where the ball is. So we defend the ball and where the ball is coming from first, because if we don't, then we'll get broken down right near the ruck, and, you know, all the nice stuff on the outsides are pointless. So as we're moving, no matter where the collision is, there's always a defense either side moving. So I think defense is like a wave, always kind of coming, waving in and out of onto the rocks. So as the defense is moved in, it goes there. We're already filling on the inside. Then a fold goes around and connects to the outside, and then we're set. So if they come back this way, that's fine. And if it's in open play, and, you know, we haven't created a ruck, and they just decide to go that way, and then they throw the ball back, well, we're not over chasing. We're not going to chase into each other, but we're moving up, and then we're keeping going. And that's one of the reasons that if you don't go up and then keep moving on the inside and go up and then stop, the rest of the defense will go off this way. They come back that way, and there's massive holes between your defenders. So we have to keep moving on the inside and filling. So we keep going up and moving up. So if the ball comes back this way, happy days, because we're already moving up, and 1 pass, 2 pass, someone clatters somebody else. So it's all about going back to your defensive policies and how you want to operate. I don't think then when you get them right, I don't think it matters, you know, where they're defending. Where they're attacking.
Yeah, I would add a few things. So we've talked about fold a lot tonight, and I think, again, the opposite of fold is hold. So that player that I talked about that's calling people around, their other job is to look up and see the numbers of attackers that are in front of them. And if the numbers are balanced, then you don't necessarily always have to fold people around a ruck. You might tell them to stay rather than tell them to come. So that would be the one thing I talk about, is the hold is also as equally as important. It's a concept that will help you, but it's not a hard and fast golden rule that 2 people have to go around every single time. If the attack hold everybody on one side, then why would you send players around that way? You would want them to hold so that you match numbers. The other thing I would do is typically off lineouts is a really good example. When you get all the forwards on one side of the field and you don't balance your field, typically when the forwards are done, they just kind of drop into your defensive line. And if you haven't balanced the field and tried to get faster players onto an edge, if the attack goes up the middle of the field and comes back, you might get a mismatch in skill and ability. And so that's why that defensive balance is really key, is that if a team kind of comes back and tries to pick off something like that, then you've already put players in a position that might be able to handle it. So understanding how you can defend off set piece will always help mitigate some of that stuff. If a team tries to come back and try and create a mismatch, you've already kind of thought about it and you're getting players in the right position.
I think as well, you can't say like hard and fast all the time. Aaron brought up a really good point there, that it is fluid to a degree, but how are you allowing players to make decisions, and what frameworks are you giving those players decisions to make? So if you make something rigid and they make decision based on that rigidity and it's wrong, that's your fault as a coach. But if you're giving them tools to make decisions, and that's why I think policies are great, because they allow you to make decisions based off certain things, criteria, things you're seeing, then usually when they start using that, one, they start usually making the right decisions and they start making informed decisions, but two, it allows you to question them. And you already have, questions loaded in terms of the policies that you're trying to work to. So if someone doesn't connect in to the ruck or overfolds or et cetera, you can actually ask them, well, why are we trying to defend first, and what's our policy on that? Well, I'm trying to defend the ball first. Or did you hear someone, communicate with you? Well, I heard a hold call. Okay, so how does that inform your decision? Okay, well, I know I need to hold in there. So you're not answering their questions all the time, but you're using policies to drive their behavior and ask questions so they can make good informed decisions within the game.
Some things. Aaron, I know you've got to go, so I'll let you go first. If you want to say your parting words, last piece of advice before you go.
No, just thank you very much for inviting me on. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to email me. But yeah, thanks again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Well done.
Right. Dave,
I'm happy to stay around for 5 more minutes if anyone's got any questions.
last word is yours then. Biggest piece of advice or sort of a take-home message from today.
Biggest, simplify everything. Bring down your key focuses and make it as simple as possible. As coaches, you probably got this much that you want to work on, watch that much video, but how do you give the players this much and make 2 or 3 key focuses every single time you're coaching? Even if you've got 20 things, how do you make it 2? And the 2 most key focuses to try and really drive performance with the team. Those 2 key focuses may change, but I think simplification for your players is absolutely key in getting those key messages.
Yeah, they can't do it all at once or keep it all in their brains at once, right?
Yeah, we all know that.
All right, well, that'll be it for us for tonight. As Dave said, he's maybe happy to stay on if you do have a question for him afterwards, but thank you so much to Aaron and to Dave for taking the time to share their expertise with us today. And thank you to all of you for attending tonight and for all of the sessions that we've attended. You will receive 2 PD points if you've given us your NCCP number for all these sessions that you attended live. And that should be reflected in your locker account over the next few weeks if it's not already. If you did miss any and you'd like to catch the recording or you want to rewatch any of them, they'll all be available on our Rugby Ontario YouTube channel. And you'll be able to find those links as well as all of the slides and resources from our panelists on the coaching corner of our website. And we'll be emailing that out as well. So that's all we've got for you. Thank you again and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Budge.